Alright, you've just discovered how to find the missing side length of a right triangle using trig ratios. So now we want to discover how to find the missing angle. So if you'll find this page in your packet, we'll use some of these problems down here as an example. So let's look down at number 5 that I've started for you. Different from finding the missing side length, we don't know that angle measure. However, we're going to still start with that angle measure and talk about this being the opposite side and the adjacent side. So that's a tangent feature. Okay. We'll have the tangent of x equal to opposite 30 over 20. But again, different from last time, we're now solving for an angle measure. Well, when we solve for an angle measure, we're going to use a function called the inverse functions of trig. So the inverse of tangent, 30 divided by 20. So I know some of us have different calculators. Okay. If you have a graphing calculator, there is a set of buttons, and I'll hide my menu here. You've been using sine, cosine, and tangent for the last couple of days. Well, if you look in blue, you have your inverse functions. So that tells us we have to hit that blue button before we hit tangent and say 30 divided by 20. We want to be sure that our mode is in degree mode. Okay, so what I did is I hit the mode button on my calculator, and notice I'm in radians. That's not good. I want to be in degrees. So I'm going to arrow over and hit enter. Second, quit. And I'm going to try this again because that's not very plausible. That's not a whole degree measure. And that looks a lot better. Okay, we're going to say that x is equal to 56 degrees. We'll round to the nearest whole degree. 56 degrees. So again, those steps, I went to mode. You need to double check that it's in degree mode. If it's not, arrow down and arrow over. You can hit enter to highlight it. Second, quit. Your inverse functions are in blue. That tells us to hit our blue button first, and you can complete that fraction. Some of us, I know, are operating on a TI-36. In a TI-36, your sine and your inverse sine, your cosine, your inverse, tangent, inverse, are all on the same button. So what that's going to tell you to do is to hit it twice. If you hit that button twice, you'll get that inverse, and you'll get the same answer there. So let's try this again. Let's start with our acute angle. We have the opposite over the hypotenuse. So that tells us we're using the sine of x equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. So to find that degree measure, we're going to use that inverse sine function, 14 over 26. And I get that x is, if I round to the nearest degree, is 33. Because in my calculator, I get 32.57. Round it to the nearest degree, that's 33 degrees. So let's look at number 7. Let's continue these examples. I still start with that angle measure I was given. This is the adjacent side and the hypotenuse. So that tells me I have a cosine function. So cosine of x is equal to the adjacent over the hypotenuse. We'll use that inverse function. So cosine inverse 10 divided by 16. I get x equal to 51 degrees. if we round to that nearest whole number. Last example here, number 8. Starting with this acute angle measure, we'll go opposite, and this is the hypotenuse. So the hypotenuse has a y. Okay. That's sine. That's the trig ratio of sine. So we're dealing with sine of x is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. So x will be equal to that inverse sine function, 7 over 11. So 7 divided by 11. And if I round to the nearest whole degree, that's 40 degrees. So there's my math for those last two. If you flip over onto the back, I'm sure you'll find more examples where your degree measure is missing. And this is the process on how to find that missing angle.